Ladies and gentlemen, this is a warning. Thank you.
A paper route was the regular rite of passage for most children growing up in the age before the internet. It was a way to learn responsibility and make some extra money. In neighborhoods across America, it was common to see kids on bicycles or walking in the early morning hours, tossing newspapers onto porches before school. It was considered safe, even routine. Though a number of notorious child murder cases had occurred in the 1970s and before, it was not until the early 80s when several high-profile child abductions occurred, their cases growing a national fear of stranger danger. Parents' realization that their children may not truly be as safe as they thought in their own communities. Cases such as Aiden Pates in New York and Adam Walsh in Florida would trigger years of investigations, public pressure, and media coverage. But still, for Middle America, many believe that such horrendous crimes could not occur near them. The big cities of NYC or Miami were a far cry from Des Moines, Iowa, which was just above 190,000 people in the 1980 census. But just 1 year after Adam Walsh would be abducted from a Florida mall, Des Moines, a city affectionately referred to as Niceville, USA, would see their sense of security shattered when a young paperboy would be abducted from his very own neighborhood in the early morning hours.
Thousands of people have been searching for the boy, but nothing positive has turned up.
Hundreds of leads and thousands of reported sightings were checked out.
Law enforcement authorities have no new leads in the case and had few to begin with.
State investigators, the FBI, and private detectives were brought into the case.
Along with Aiden Pates and Adam Walsh, the name Johnny Gosch would change the face of America forever, impacting not only parental watchfulness, but police and public attention to how missing children cases are treated. But Johnny was not the only young paperboy who would vanish on the streets of Des Moines. Soon another boy went missing, and another.
Another Des Moines newsboy disappeared while delivering Sunday newspapers.
How can it happen twice?
It's just like a movie being rerun, except the actors are different. It's exactly the way I felt.
The unsolved case of the Des Moines paperboy abductions has continued to haunt the parents and community, uncovering a disturbing number of conspiracies, secrets, and shocking truths that even underneath the blue Midwestern skies of Iowa, evil and perversion run deep.
I think everybody wants to know what happened so it doesn't happen again.
Goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer.
There could be a serial killer in Chicago.
The Oakland County child killer.
Phantom Killer.
Frankfurt slasher.
4 children have now been murdered.
Has killed 5 and says he's going to kill again.
15 brutally murdered young women.
The pattern is the same.
One by one,
the death count started rising.
A man in a mask robbed, tied, and stabbed them.
Strangled, stuffed in burlap bags.
It is highly unlikely that these women were murdered by separate men.
Where will the killer strike next?
Police can't answer who or why.
That's the question that we'll never know.
I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering if this person's going to be caught.
I believe that there's someone out there that has knowledge.
And he's probably still at large.
If you know our own road, you know we value our privacy. In our personal life, it's not always easy to maintain. Whether we know it or not, sites will mine our data like full name, email, health records, and more, which they will sell to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who wants to snoop. That's why we started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows us which data brokers are selling our personal information and automatically submits opt-out requests on our behalf. This not only reduces the amount of spam you'll get, but protects against hackers who can use this information to gain access to our social media, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also provides a ton of other features bundled into one easy-to-use app at an affordable price. You get antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without needing to bother with different apps. We all have one or more of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. And if you're a regular viewer, you'll know how often that happens. Like 24-hour security, motion sensors, and guard dogs, Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping my info safe so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. Relaxing. theruinroad values our privacy, and we also value yours. Go to aura.com/ruinroad to start a free 2-week trial, also linked below in the description. Des Moines is the most populous city in the entire state of Iowa. Founded as a hub for transportation and commerce, as the 20th century progressed, it would increasingly become an insurance and finance center for the country as a whole. As with most major cities, since the highs of the 1960s, the populations were slightly dipping, with families moving outwards into the ever-growing suburban sprawls. One such suburb was that of West Des Moines. Technically a city on its own, West Des Moines has embraced being a part of Des Moines as a whole when they changed from their original name of Valley Junction in 1938. By the 1980s, West Des Moines was the largest suburb of the city and one of the most developed, with nearby suburbs of Urbandale and Clive having been incorporated much more recently. Even so, its population was only 22,000 residents in 1980, or 11.5% of Des Moines' proper total residents. While the new I-235 highway had brought bigger businesses along that corridor, most of the city was characterized by its quiet residential developments. Families were drawn to its well-regarded school system, low crime rates, and sense of community. At the end of one such street, seemingly indistinguishable from any number of others, and this ranch house, also similar to a number of other homes, was one such stereotypical all-American family. The Gosches would move into this house on 45th Street shortly after its construction in 1975, and 7 years later, it was still close to the outskirts of the city. Noreen Gosch was a yoga instructor and had 2 children from a previous marriage. Her husband John was an Army veteran and a businessman in the farm chemicals industry. Together, they had one son, Johnny, born in 1969. It was about 5:40 a.m. September 5th, the day before Labor Day 1982, when 12-year-old Johnny Gosch would leash his pet dachshund Gretchen, grab his wagon, and head out to get the morning papers. Typically, Johnny would wake his father, who would help him deliver the weekend papers, but that morning, he decided to do it alone. Johnny enjoyed his paper route, which he had taken over for his older brother the year prior, and it had allowed him to save up to buy his dirt bike and model rockets from the mall. When he had change left over, he would buy a rose from the flower shop to give to his mother. A big kid for his age, Johnny was known to stand up to bullies, once fighting off 4 neighborhood boys who were picking on some smaller children. To get to his paper drop-off corner, Johnny would cut through his neighbor's backyard to Ashworth Street, which ran behind, and he would walk along east to the first corner of 42nd Street, where the Des Moines Register delivery van would drop off papers for the area's paper carriers. In total, just an 850-foot walk from the Gosch home. That day, as he walked along Ashworth, a blue 2-tone, possibly Ford Fairmont, would stop and back up to alongside Johnny and ask him directions to 86th Street. When the boy called down to ask John Rossi, the only adult at the corner helping his son that morning, the car would suddenly do a U-turn and speed off. At the time, no one gave the incident any further thought, and Johnny joined the small group of paperboys all rolling and rubber banding the Sunday edition, before splitting up on their respective routes, with Johnny heading north along 42nd Street, passing by 2 more boys heading down to collect their own papers. Just a short time later, as those boys returned up 42nd, they spotted Johnny's wagon left near the corner of 42nd and Marcourt Lane, just 475 feet from the paper drop-off. Johnny had vanished. It was around 7:30 a.m. when the Gosch family received the first phone call from someone to inquire why they had not received their morning paper. When they found Gretchen the dog had returned home on her own, John Sr. would get dressed and head out to check on his son, where he found the red wagon left sitting at the corner, still full of papers. In an era where missing children were required to be gone for a full 24 hours, police would believe the boy was simply a runaway. However, 30 officers did join in a search that afternoon,
The boy was last seen this morning about 6 o'clock as he began his paper route in front of Valley United Methodist Church. After the boy folded his papers and loaded his wagon, he walked a block north on 42nd Street and turned here at Marquardt Lane. A while later, the boy's father found the wagon with newspapers blowing in the wind.
When questioned, some of the boys who had been on the corner of Ashworth and 42nd stated they spotted a vehicle, seemed to stop and ask Johnny something as he was walking before it drove off. And then a few minutes later, another boy stated he saw Johnny at the corner talking to a stocky man. But in the darkness of the early morning, he was unsure if it was the same one seen in the vehicle that stopped along Ashworth. Another boy who lived in the second story of the home directly opposite from the corner where the wagon was left would state he had been awake at the time and heard a car door slam, causing him to look out the window and see a silver and black Ford Fairmont run through the stop sign and turn north on 42nd, opposite from where the paper route drop-off was.
But law enforcement agents are still waiting for some solid leads, including information about the 2 cars seen in the area of John's disappearance Sunday morning. Officers say the investigation will continue.
Police would have a composite sketch of the first man who stopped along Ashland drawn up, but never released it to the public or even provided it to the Gosch family, as the different witnesses could never agree on exactly what that man looked like. As the first day's search turned up no sign of the missing boy, police would switch back from possible abduction to regarding the case as a missing person.
Well, we continue on. We've got a lot of information we're sorting through. Our teams are checking out leads as they come in. I'm sure the search will continue tomorrow.
Is this still being treated as a missing persons case at this point?
Yes, it is.
You don't think it's a kidnapping, though, do you?
I'm not ruling out anything, but I have nothing to indicate that it was a kidnapping.
You think you would have heard from the kidnappers by now if it was a kidnapping?
I would state that normally, yes.
With little to go on, police turn an eye on early morning routine, exactly to the hour when 12-year-old John Gosch suddenly vanished on his paper route 1 week ago. Officers stopped motorists at several intersections to see if they routinely drove in the neighborhood just before dawn. Police were looking for possible witnesses or for any suspicious activities. Authorities learned nothing new and say they still have no solid evidence the boy was abducted.
Here is a close-up of a 14-year-old boy in terrible trouble. John David Gosch was kidnapped on a Sunday morning as he delivered newspapers in suburban Des Moines. With us now live are Noreen and John Gosch, his parents. If someone sees him, what should they do? Who should they call?
They should call our home telephone number, which is area code 515-225-7456.
Well, if anyone sees a little boy that looks anything like Johnny Gosch, call that number.
Thank you very much. I would like to speak directly to the people who are holding our son. Contact us, please. We'll meet your demands. This is a plea for you to release our son.
From the beginning, the Gosches said Johnny was abducted. While search parties combed through fields and woods near Johnny's home, the West Des Moines Police Department maintained the child was a runaway. And as is often the case, lacking evidence of a crime, police waited 2 days to investigate the possibility that Johnny was kidnapped.
The problem is that they thought from the beginning that Johnny was a runaway. They did not want to act like the child had been abducted. And so they just sat back, put their feet up on their desk, shut off their mouth, and really did not get with the program like they should have.
The police department, not only in this town, but in most towns, will tell you that you don't have a crime until you have evidence of a crime.
Literally, they're still telling us that they have no crime. Well, we no longer have a son, do we?
The Gosches say there has now been a total, complete break with the West Des Moines Police Department. They say the department's lack of experience in child abduction cases has resulted in uncooperativeness and a failure to do many basic things that were needed.
So the Gosches, along with the private investigator they hired, released their own composites in hopes of generating leads.
And while they waited for those tips to come in, the first big family holiday without their son approached.
Our mode of thinking for Thanksgiving Day in this house will not be a negative tone. We'll miss Johnny. There's an empty chair. And anytime the family circle cannot be together, it's bad, it's sad. But we are going to remain thankful because we have not had a dead body to contend with.
Private investigators cost money, about $1,000 a week. And to raise it, John and Noreen have established Help Find Johnny Gosch, Inc. The organization, which has branches in Omaha and 2 other cities, has distributed thousands of flyers of Johnny. Help Find Johnny Gosch, Inc. is keeping up with the detective bills through sales of candy bars and buttons and proceeds from charity events.
Okay, now you can go have a good time.
I think it's appalling that in this land of wealth and waste that you have to sell a piece of chocolate to ever hope to find your child again. We have foundations for Save the Seals, Save the Whales, Save the Zoos, Save the Battleships. What about the children of this country? Have you hugged that child today? We can no longer do that.
The Gosches routinely talk to church and civic groups, hoping to spur interest in a state law that would require police departments to treat missing children as kidnap victims in those first few hours after a child disappears.
That child is counting on you to continue to look. And if Johnny Gosch did not have his mother and father that believed he was still alive and continued to look for him, how far do you think that anyone else would look if we didn't apply pressure?
John and Noreen Gosch do not want sympathy. They do not feel sorry for themselves.
We don't have time. There's too much to do. Awareness, type of things that we're doing, letters to write. There's always a new agency somewhere to send a picture of Johnny and an explanation as to what's happened. I fill my life with creative, positive things to do to find him. I don't sit around with my thumb in my ear feeling sorry for myself. Every day that goes by that we do not find a dead body, that's Thanksgiving for us. That's a plus. So if we try to look at it that way, it gets us through that day and on to the next.
Mrs. Gosch is a very determined woman, and she's going to be determined probably to the end, and I think a lot of people realize this at this time. She's pushing in this direction. The police are over here. They have no place to go. They can't find anything, come back to Mrs. Gosch and say, we have done this. In fact, there's a question in her mind still whether they're doing anything at all.
Following this release that we made, the FBI referred to us as loons. That is a message to America that if you try to find your child, and if you work diligently at it, you may be referred to as loons by the FBI, who are doing nothing to help the parents.
We've been disappointed. Things have not been followed through as adequately as we had hoped. And so therefore, my husband and I feel we must do what we humanly can as his parents.
It's somewhat of a frustrating investigation, but I'm very optimistic. I think that we will find the boy and he will be alive.
Just 6 months after Johnny's abduction, West Des Moines PD would find itself in the news for a scandal.
The Des Moines Tribune reports 18 officers making allegations against Chief Cooney, including doing police work after drinking, fixing the tickets of friends and relatives, being racially prejudiced, and interfering with a department investigation against one of his sons. Both Cooney and Mayor George Mills say the actions of this many officers in a 37-person department cannot be ignored.
Police Chief Orville Cooney would resign, and a city investigator would clear him of most allegations, though serious administrative problems were cited. The Gosch family would long oppose Cooney, believing he hampered the investigation, and over the years, a number of curious tidbits would come out here and there, though many would either be disproved or still rumors. A month before the abduction, John Sr. stated that a woman sitting in a car with California license plates seemed to be taking photos of Johnny. The night before the abduction, when the family was attending a high school football game, a police officer would be seen speaking to Johnny underneath the bleachers, though Cooney refused to provide records of police officers working the game. In later years, the officer was identified and cleared of any suspicion.
Okay, what is your name again? Okay. And do you have a telephone number or anything else that we can, maybe I have our detectives give you a call? Every time the telephone rings, you know, the heart just pounds out of your chest almost, because you're hoping to hear the little voice on the other end saying, Dad, Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Who's that?
It was a girl from Bend, Oregon that said that she was in a roller skating rink last night and she swore that she saw a boy that looked just like Johnny. And the reason she said that is that she had just stopped at a truck stop and saw one of our flyers. And she said that it looked just like the boy.
I need 10 people on this side. Just follow the creek. The psychic said basically close to the creek bottoms.
Psychics have told the Gosches the boy is dead and his body will be found within 2 miles of their home near a creek.
It's something we have to check out because otherwise start getting a bunch of snow and everything else, and it would tear us apart if we didn't have any news by then.
Johnny Gosch had vanished 7 months earlier. Still today, he is gone.
12-year-old Johnny Gosch vanished on a warm Sunday morning last September while delivering newspapers in this neighborhood in West Des Moines, Iowa. In Johnny's room, there is a suitcase packed neatly with his clothes, waiting for his return. Outside, the front porch light burns 24 hours a day, as it has for 7 months.
The first night that Johnny was missing, somebody flicked off the light, and we decided, hey, Johnny's not home. Turn the light back on, and it's been on ever since.
Johnny, we love you. We're waiting for you to come home. We're doing everything in our power to get you back. And we're leaving the porch light on every night. Moms are like that. Take care, babe.
By June 1984, along with John Walsh, father of Adam Walsh, Noreen and John Gosch were part of the group to begin the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, a nonprofit organization that still operates today. The Gosches would also lobby for the Johnny Gosch Bill in Iowa, which would require immediate police response when a child went missing, and it was signed into Iowa law on July 1st, 1984, 2 weeks after President Reagan held the official opening ceremony for the National Center on the White House lawn. Unfortunately, it would not be long before Iowa's new law was put into action. Just 43 days after that bill was passed, 13-year-old Eugene Martin left his home here on Fraser Avenue at 5 a.m. the morning of Sunday, August 12, 1984, on the south side of Des Moines. As with West Des Moines, the south side was and still is on the outskirts of town, flanked on one side by the International Airport and on the other by numerous parks and lakes. Historically, the South Side has been close to mining and later industrial operations, with its affordable housing drawing in a culturally diverse group of working-class immigrants. Eugene was living with his father and stepmother along with their 5 children, and typically his older brother accompanied him on his paper route, but had spent the night prior over at a friend's house. Gene, as he was called, enjoyed playing football, fishing, skating, and Saturday morning cartoons. As the Iowa Fair was approaching, he was saving his money from the paper route for the carnival. His 14th birthday was coming up in a week. About 15 minutes after leaving, he would arrive to the corner of 14th and Highview Streets, a 3/4 mile walk from his home, where he would collect the Des Moines Register papers and begin to roll them. 45 minutes later, around 6 a.m., the newspaper began to receive calls that papers along that route were being delivered. The route manager would drive over to the pickup spot and find Gene's delivery bag left on the ground, full with 10 rolled Sunday editions. Figuring the 13-year-old had simply left, the manager would deliver the papers himself before heading to the Martin home and ask what happened. It was then that everyone realized another paperboy had gone missing. Following the new protocol, police immediately launched into action, issuing an all-whites bulletin setting up roadblocks and alerting the FBI, with the lieutenant telling his force he did not want another botched West Des Moines deal. 16 FBI agents would also join in the search, stating there might be a connection to Johnny Gosch.
Another Des Moines newsboy disappeared while delivering Sunday newspapers. Because of a new state law, the Gosches helped push through. The police started looking for Gene Martin right away. He's still missing too.
So right now, this is all we have. This is a what I would call a composite description of the 6 witnesses.
What happened to 13-year-old Eugene Martin?
I want to believe that he's still alive. And whoever's got him, all they have to do is let us know where he's at, and we'll go get him and bring him home. But if he is dead, I still want to know so we can bring him home and give him a decent burial.
Mr. Martin, did your son know about the Johnny Gosch case?
Yes, he's heard of it, and he's been aware of the story of Johnny Gosch and all.
Is it possible that the same person kidnapped both boys, or is that just a coincidence?
It's possible. At this point, they have not determined whether there is a link between the 2 cases yet, but there's a great many facts that are very striking.
Are you hopeful that the trail for Eugene Martin might lead to Johnny too?
Yes, we are.
Steve Kramus, Metro Circulation Manager, ordered the department's 49 supervisors to drive through their districts and oversee morning deliveries.
The Des Moines Register, which employed about 2,000 paper carriers, increased their reward amount from the previous $5,000 to $25,000 for any information about the missing boys. Police tracked down the owner of a green car seen in the area the morning of Eugene's disappearance, which appeared to be following 2 women. But the driver was cleared after it was learned he had simply been dropping his wife off. Another 3 people had stated they spotted Eugene speaking with a clean-cut 30-something-year-old man while folding the papers, and it appeared to be a friendly conversation, as if they were father and son, this sketch being released of that man. 4 days later, President Ronald Reagan personally phoned to ask if there was anything he could do to help, and the Register suggested that missing persons flyers be put up in post offices around the country, which the president agreed to, but apparently forgot about a week later when federal officials stated it probably wouldn't be effective and would not follow through on the promise. 5 days after his abduction, on what would be his 14th birthday, the boy's reward fund had climbed to $64,000, and by the end of the month would top $110,000. The community and Gosch family would pledge their support, with the Martins telling papers they didn't even know half the people who stopped by their home to bring gifts or words of comfort, saying one man gave them a $100 bill, while the Avon lady brought a cherry pie and potato salad. Iowa's then Governor Terry Branstad even met with the Martins, saying he held a personal interest in the case. Within weeks of the abduction, the local Hy-Vee grocery stores began printing Johnny and Eugene's faces on their plastic bags with reward information, a concept that struck a chord with an employee at the Anderson Erickson Dairy Company in town, who suggested to his company that they put the missing boys' faces on the side of the company's milk cartons, a concept that soon became a national program the following January. At the end of August, when Country, a drama starring Jessica Lange and Sam Shepard, was filmed in nearby Waterloo, Iowa, held its premiere, local theaters donated their profits to the Martin and Gosch search funds.
You just feel completely lost. You don't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to.
I've got a couple boys of my own, and I'd hate to lose either one of them.
I'd do if somebody kidnapped me, because it'd be kind of scary. Because they might kill me or take me away and brainwash me or something.
It's just like a movie being rerun, that we're watching a movie, except the actors are different. It's exactly the way I felt.
He's always there. We talking about him every day anyway. We don't forget him. I don't think we ever will.
That October, police would receive a videotaped confession by a man working for the Register, on which he admitted to molesting paperboys, providing the investigation with its first publicly named suspect. Frank Sikora was no stranger to Des Moines police. Back in 1974, his brother was arrested for sodomizing a 10-year-old boy that had spent the night at their home to help 27-year-old Frank with his paper route the next morning. A decade later, Samuel Soda, a private investigator and founder of SCARED, an acronym for Stolen Children Are Reported Daily, who had begun investigating the Gosch case on his own, conducted an interview with Frank, whereupon he confessed to fondling as many as 14 paper carriers. Under the pretense of hiring them to run papers from his car to each house, Frank invited the boys to sleep over the night before, showing them illicit material and inappropriately touching them. Frank was immediately fired from his job in the Register's circulation department, but police would announce they cleared him as a suspect in the boys' disappearances with a polygraph test, charging him for just 2 sexual assaults on 2 boys, aged 13 and 14, earning Frank a 10-year prison sentence. He would serve just 4 years before being paroled, then moving to northwestern Iowa, where he stayed until his death in 2020. As for Samuel Soda, he would find himself a prime suspect to many armchair sleuths later years on. Sam had served 2 tours as a Marine in Vietnam, worked as an Army recruiter in New York, ran an auto parts store in Kansas, and even spent a short time as a police officer in Des Moines before he moved back permanently in 1979, starting his private investigation agency the following year. Over his travels, Sam had been wed 3 times and produced 6 children. Using actual photos that child predators took of their victims, Sam traveled throughout the state giving talks about the dangers of predator rings. While prosecutors knew he was showing these photos, a felony in itself, the first assistant attorney of Polk County turned a blind eye. After doing this tour for a year, SCARED was disbanded and Soda tried his hand at politics, losing a run for the city council when he was outed for making false claims about winning 2 Purple Hearts in Vietnam. He would work on the zoning commission and close the detective agency in 1991. 2 years later, Sam would be arrested for beating his 11-year-old stepson. Going down the rabbit hole on Samuel Soda, one can find a number of allegations of ties to organized crime, sexual assault, and very circumstantial evidence. It is unlikely we will ever know the truth about the man after he passed away in 2020. Back to 1985, a number of other strange tangents would pop up, further slamming the Gosch and Martin search. First, in July that year, when a woman received a $1 bill as change at a grocery store in Sioux City, Iowa. Written on that bill were the words, "I am alive," followed by the signature of Johnny Gosch.
The lady called us one night about 9 o'clock at night and said that she had received this bill and change at a grocery store in Sioux City, Iowa. And I asked her, would you please send us the bill? I'll send you $1 back for it. That's what she did.
The signature is right in this area.
After 3 separate handwriting analysts examined the signature, it was believed to be authentic, prompting Johnny's parents to offer $400,000 for his return. But then another bill turned up, and another, and then another, until the FBI announced that at least a majority of the thus far 7 bills were hoaxes. Next, the Gosches received a letter that said Johnny was kidnapped by a motorcycle gang operating a child slavery ring. A clandestine meeting was held with a letter writer in Kansas City, a man named Robert Herman Meyer, who said he was a former bike member and would try to get Johnny back from the Mexican drug lord he was sold to, for a $10,000 fee. Instead, Meyer took that money and hid out at a dude ranch in Tennessee, arranging for a friend to write the family saying he died during the rescue attempt. Robert Meyer was soon arrested for this scam and tried yet again to make a deal to provide information before eventually admitting his lies and receiving a 3-year sentence for wire fraud. The next year, yet another man from Syracuse, New York tried the same stunt, this time asking for just $2,500. And when he met with undercover agents posing as the Gosch family, he too was arrested. With the nationwide attention came a number of hoaxers. But back in Des Moines, when police executed search warrants on all known local child sex offenders in February 1986, yet another Des Moines Register route manager was arrested for crimes against children. Wilbur Millhouse was hired as the Register's South Side circulation manager in the 1960s. A few years later, he formed the Greater Des Moines Youth Movement, a patriotic organization which gathered at local political events in support of the military. In 1975, when a teenager reported Millhouse had sexually harassed him on the phone, the court ordered a psychiatric evaluation and 30 days in jail. But just 3 years later, Wilbur Millhouse found himself employed yet again as the West Des Moines circulation manager. 1 month before Johnny's abduction, Wilbur was switched to the eastern side. And when brought in for questioning, he made a curious statement to the effect of had Johnny kept his mouth shut about something, nothing would have happened to him. Millhouse continued at the Register for 13 months until a heart attack forced him to resign. In February 1986, as part of the searching of all known sex offenders, over 2,200 boys' phone numbers were found written next to names in yearbooks or on baseball rosters, which Wilbur first phoned to inquire about working as paperboys, but then later called back attempting to solicit sex. When police sent letters out to all names found in the book requesting information, they would convict Wilbur on 6 counts of luring boys into his home, handing out a 30-year prison sentence. After being released in the year 2000, Wilbur Millhouse moved to Kansas in 2005, passing away in 2015. If any of these 3 men had involvement in the 2 boys' abductions, Sam Soda alone could be possible when the next young boy vanished on the streets of Des Moines. The day before Easter Sunday, on March 29, 1986, 13-year-old Mark Allen would leave his home here on Southwest Emma Avenue in the Greater South Side, waving to his mother as he went out of sight behind some bushes by the sidewalk and asking her to save him a slice of the pizza she had just cooked. He would never be seen again. Mark had grown up being bounced around between his divorced parents' and grandparents' houses, resulting in some disciplinary issues in recent years. His mother said he was a good student but lacked common sense. Police reported Allen as a runaway, believing he had went to visit his father in Minneapolis, and so the case would not draw the attention and panic of citizens. But by 1990, when the remains of a boy's skeleton were found outside of Des Moines, Mark was added alongside Johnny and Eugene as who it was tested against. But yet again, the families were left without answers, when the skeleton was determined to be an adult female, possibly linked to serial killer Marvin Irvin. While Mark was never known to be a paperboy, it was just 3 months after his abduction when someone would try to grab another newspaper carrier off the streets of Des Moines. A thunderstorm was hitting West Des Moines on the morning of Thursday, July 10, 1986, when 15-year-old Jim Pollock was walking along the 500 block of 42nd Street, delivering Des Moines Register papers in Ingersoll Park, just 2 neighborhoods west of downtown. Suddenly, a man ran across the street from behind and grabbed Jim, pulling his arms behind him. The boy managed to kick him in the shins and escape, sprinting the half-mile up to his home on 40th Street, where he told his parents and police arrived. Though the man's face was obscured by his camo-colored rain poncho, Jim told police he was very muscular based on how he was able to grab him. The man never uttered a word during the incident. He would also state that about 6 weeks earlier, he had been chased back home by a man while he was delivering papers, but couldn't be certain if it was the same person. While this incident was kept hushed, everyone noted the similarities to the previous abductions, with this one occurring a straight 5 miles down from where Johnny Gosch went missing. In August that same year, another boy would vanish. 16-year-old Jason Rogers had come to town for the state fair on August 16th with his friends when he disappeared. A massive search was launched as everyone feared the worst. But then, 4 days later, Jason phoned home. It would turn out that the boy had planned his own disappearance because he was tired of being treated like a child, so he purchased a one-way ticket to California, only phoning after he ran out of money. Yet again, things went silent for 2 years, until a white van would begin terrorizing paperboys again. The first incident would happen in mid-September 1988, when an unnamed paperboy between 10 and 13 would be chased through Indianola, a small city about 15 miles south of Des Moines. 6 weeks later, back in the western Des Moines suburb of Clive, it was around 5 a.m. Tuesday, November 1st, when 10-year-old Mike Fackler was delivering papers along Northwest 82nd Street, just north of the highway from where the Gosches lived. Suddenly, a heavy-set man in a jogging suit jumped from his white van he stopped inside the apartment parking lot and began to run towards Mike, who would immediately drop his paper bag and run screaming to the home of Bill and Jan Tegler on the corner of 82nd and Alice Avenue. When they heard the first scream, Bill hopped out of bed and began putting his pants on. But when they heard that second scream, he dropped them and ran to the door, stating if you heard how the boy sounded, you wouldn't have hesitated either. Once Mike had begun pounding on the Teglers' front door, however, the man stopped chasing and had vanished by the time they opened that door. Police would note his description matched that of the one given by the boy in Indianola, and Noreen Gosch urged authorities and the public to take these recent incidents seriously after Mike's own father gave an interview saying that he wasn't very concerned, and believed it was just a man who enjoyed scaring children. Though he did add he planned to accompany his son on the paper route for some time, and if someone tried it again, he'd break their kneecaps. Mike, however, would eventually tell police it was possible the man was simply a regular jogger and he had overreacted. But when the following year another pair of abduction attempts happened, everyone took the cases more seriously. Back in northern Indianola, an 11-year-old boy was delivering papers around 5:15 a.m. the morning of Saturday, July 17th, when he noticed a white van with a red vinyl top had turned the wrong way down a one-way to follow him along his paper route. It was then that the driver hopped out of the car and began to scream obscenities and said he would stab the boy if he didn't get into the van. He managed to catch the child and started dragging him back towards the vehicle. However, that boy managed to wriggle out of his sweatshirt and escape, fleeing to a nearby home as the van sped off. Police released this composite of that man, who was said to be in his 40s with salt and pepper colored hair, standing 6'2" and walking with a slight stoop. The following day, Iowa's Division of Criminal Investigation would make the unusual move to join the case, stating they were looking into this and Mike Fackler's abduction attempt as related to Johnny Gosch and Eugene Martin's cases. Yet again, 2 months later, another paper carrier was attacked, but this time was not a boy. Around 6:20 the morning of Thursday, September 14th, 11-year-old Melissa Gale was delivering papers along the 3500 block of Fleur Drive in the southwestern Hills neighborhood of Des Moines, just above the airport and a mile and a half north of Eugene Martin's abduction. As she was walking, a man in a dark blue, possibly Chevy Chevette, pulled into the driveway right in front of her and in a deep voice ordered her to get inside. Melissa's father was helping her deliver papers, and she ran back north up Fleur to where he was only a short distance away. The man, meanwhile, would not exit his vehicle, but instead pulled out and drove the opposite way. She described him as in his 20s or 30s, with large oval-shaped eyes, a big nose, and a mole on his cheek below his right eye. She also noticed a canvas sack on his back seat. Most considered this case isolated from the rest, but that same year, when a 21-year-old man was arrested for sexually assaulting a child, he made statements that not only would tie him forever with the Johnny Gosch case, but seemingly uncover a massive child predator ring operating just 2 hours away. "120 miles to the west of Des Moines lies the city of Omaha, Nebraska. Sitting along a quiet side street not far from downtown sits the former Franklin Credit Union. Since it opened in 1970, Lawrence E. King Jr. served as the bank's treasurer and manager. The one-time opera singer had risen as a prominent member of his community and the Republican Party, serving on Ronald Reagan's re-election inauguration committee and even singing the national anthem at the Republican National GOP convention twice.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chair now recognizes Lawrence King Jr., a member of the Nebraska delegation, for the singing of the national anthem.
But there was a dark side to Lawrence King. About 8 years after opening, the first signs of mismanagement at the credit union were discovered, with accountants discovering unusual deposits and withdrawals, loans being improperly documented, and other seeming oversights, which would amount to $400,000 unaccounted for dollars. By the 1980s, many had grown aware that Lawrence was living far beyond his means, owning mansions in Washington, D.C., private jets, and throwing lavish parties. In one instance, an anonymous letter was sent to police, and another bank teller would go to the board of directors asking King to be investigated. But in both instances, little to nothing was done because of King's political pull. It was not until 1987 when an investigation into the Franklin Credit Union began, and just 3 months in, information of King sexually abusing women started coming out. In November 1988, the FBI and IRS would raid the credit union, finding that almost $40 million had been embezzled from the community, in what is one of the largest credit union failures in American history. Lawrence King Jr. and several of his associates pled guilty to 40 felony counts of fraud, earning King a 15-year prison sentence. But this was just the beginning of the Franklin scandal. At the same time the credit union was being raided, the State Foster Care Review Board would turn over a stack of reports that a number of the wealthy and elite had been sexually abusing children in the foster system at parties, many of which were thrown by Lawrence King. At the forefront of these allegations was 21-year-old Paul Benassi, who himself had been arrested for sexually abusing a child in 1989. Paul alleged that King and his associates would coerce poor or runaway children to attend his parties, where they would be auctioned off as sex slaves to the wealthy and political elite.
At the beginning of the party, you had a lot of young guys stuff that were servers. We'd sometimes serve stuff, sometimes we'd be up in the background, we'd be walking around the party and stuff. Nothing was to take place then. After the party was over, the ones that were involved with him, or the ones that he was trying to get political favors from, that won whatever they wanted, they would stay or they'd come in after the party was over, or the next day. See, so at the party, nothing even abnormal. I mean, if somebody was in there and stuff, they'd see no abnormal activities going on, so they would, honestly be able to say that.
Numerous state agencies and the FBI would dig into these claims by Paul and several others who said they too had been abused at the parties, even going so far to say that they had partaken in satanic rituals, brainwashing, and CIA-Contra arms deals.
Their King, I never really had to do anything with him as long as I kept his big shots that he brought in happy. He didn't expect nothing from me. He paid me good.
Who were the big shots you brought in?
A lot of them, I don't know. A lot of them were like senators and congressmen from other states.
In July 1990, the lead investigator and his 8-year-old child would die when their private plane mysteriously exploded mid-air after he was returning with a briefcase of supposed evidence to implicate King. After his death, several of the accusers withdrew their statements, leading to a grand jury ultimately throwing the entire case out, believing it to be a carefully crafted hoax. Oh, that briefcase with the supposed evidence? It went missing from the crash site, never to be found. When polled, between 70 and 90% of Omaha citizens believed there was a cover-up involved. But in late 1990, one of the survivors of the sex ring would receive an up to 15-year jail sentence for perjury. Paul Benassi would also be charged with perjury, but the case was never pursued. Instead, him serving just 3 years for his own sexual assault on a child.
Seems every time I want to try and do something to help people, it gets pushed right back in my face. I mean, what I want to do is try and help find these guys who do this stuff.
It was during this time, after the dust had settled in Omaha, that Paul's lawyer contacted Noreen Gosch, and the Franklin scandal would forever become tied to the Des Moines Paperboy abductions.
24-year-old Paul Bonacci, a victim of sexual abuse since the age of 6. He is himself a convicted sex offender and has been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder.
I can hear what these other personalities are saying and stuff and the things they've done. I mean, like with Johnny and...
We spoke to Bonacci recently at the Nebraska State Prison.
A bunch of the different personalities right here.
It is only through these personalities that he remembers the day he helped kidnap Johnny Gosch.
During his initial interviews in 1989, Paul would state that he had first been groomed by the sex ring back in 1978, and was frequently brought along in the car when the sex ring would coerce children to come to their parties, and stated he was a witness to the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch by a man known only as Emilio, and under Lawrence King's orders.
All I remember him talking about was that this was the boy that they were going to, one of the boys they were going to take.
Paul says a Des Moines accomplice snuck up from behind as the abduction was made. Bonacci did his part, chloroforming Johnny.
When they grabbed him off the street, I was in the car, I was in the back seat. I was the one that put the chloroform over his face to knock him out.
The FBI questioned Paul's family, who stated they knew Paul was at home some 8 years prior on the very day of Johnny's abduction. So, the police ceased any further investigations, never even questioning Paul.
This is a guy who says he took part in the kidnapping, knows a lot about it. You've got a case that's been unsolved for 10 years. I would think you'd be kicking the doors down to want to talk to him at this point.
When the time is right, again, I will reiterate, we may well interview Paul Bonacci, but it will be when we're ready to do it.
How much more time has to go by?
I have no idea.
It seems outrageous that you haven't spoken to him.
That's your opinion.
A judge dismissed his lawsuit against Lawrence King and dozens of other wealthy men, with the Justice Department stating that though Paul had clearly suffered years of sexual abuse, the allegations against King were unfounded. While many could write off Paul, whose psychiatrist diagnosed him with multiple personality disorder and said he was incapable of ever fully telling the truth, there were others who were not so sure. Noreen Gosch would travel to speak with Paul Bonacci, and he shared a number of unreleased details about her son that left her convinced he was telling the truth.
The video can't pick up just how badly Noreen Gosch is shaking as she sees Paul Bonacci in the flesh for the first time. He fills out a consent form, not knowing who this woman is.
This is Johnny's mother. Mrs. Gosch wanted to talk to you.
Just tell me what happened, please.
I feel so bad about it because what they made me do.
Bonacci drew a map of the plan, a replica of one drawn by the kidnappers. Noreen Gosch says this X marks the exact spot of the abduction. She says most people mistakenly believe it happened at the corner. This is a composite sketch of Emilio. The mastermind of the plot gave Bonacci the job of chloroforming Johnny.
He talked about something about meditation, but I don't know what that meant, or yoga, or some kind of... And then when he said something about that he'd seen his mom do that or something, or she taught him how to do that.
There's just been so many things that Paul has shared with us that would have been impossible for him to know had he not been with Johnny. Did you ever see any marks or anything on Johnny's body?
When we got him in there, he had a birthmark on his chest or something on his chest. It was like looked like South America.
While information on Johnny's large chest birthmark was widely circulated, Bonacci described other markings which were never made public. A scar on Johnny's tongue. Noreen says he bit through his tongue after falling from a treehouse. A white scar on Johnny's leg just above the ankle. He'd received a burn after touching the hot tailpipe of his brother's motorcycle.
While Paul could have learned these details of the abduction through the newspapers, he seemingly could not have known about a hidden birthmark or that Johnny would stammer when he was anxious. Paul also said that he was kept in a secret room in a home in Colorado with Johnny, describing markings on the posts. And when taken to Colorado for the filming of an America's Most Wanted episode, Paul was not only able to find that house, but the hidden room and markings were also uncovered.
What happened here?
No. I remember this house being where they brought us. They kept us here. This is where they kept some of the kids hidden away out underneath the here, so that if anyone ever tried to come looking for them, they could run them underneath the house here.
The owner of that residence, a former prison guard, had abruptly moved out just a short time earlier and has never been located. It is important to note, Paul had first reported he was being sexually abused 2 full years before Lawrence King was arrested. And though it is uncertain if he named King or anyone else at that time, police did not appear to investigate his abuse claims at all.
Professionally speaking, from what I know of Mr. Bonacci, to sum it up, he is not a credible witness. What is he? A pathological liar.
Is everything that you're telling me the truth about Johnny?
Yes.
When the America's Most Wanted episode aired, dozens of calls came in of people seeming to corroborate Paul's stories, but police refused to publicly look into any of them, and eventually the case grew cold. That same year, however, 115 miles northwest of Des Moines, in the small city of Storm Lake, a string of attacks on young women occurred, starting with the attempted abduction of a paper carrier. It was around 6:40 a.m. on September 11, 1992, when a man ran up behind a 13-year-old girl delivering papers and clamped his hand over her mouth. She would manage to hit him and sprint away. A composite sketch of the man was released, and the small community would go into a panic when 4 other sexual assaults took place that very same week, this time against all adult women. In 2 of those incidents, police arrested separate men they did not believe were involved in the others. And just 3 days later, 24-year-old Scott Sterler was arrested for the newspaper carrier attack, along with an incident against another 13-year-old girl, where he again tried abducting her the same way. Scott had moved to the area just 2 years ago, though from where was never released. He would be convicted in just these 2 attacks, receiving an 8-day jail sentence, and was ordered to never return to Buena Vista County. He would move about 30 miles away to Holstein, Iowa, until 2018, when he would die in a motorcycle accident while attempting to pass a turning car and not wearing his motorcycle helmet. Though it is unlikely he was involved in the paper carrier abductions from the years prior, it is unknown if he was ever looked into for the 1989 attempted kidnapping of Melissa Gale off Fleur Drive. In 1993, the stress of the past decade would finally tear the Gosch family apart, and Noreen was forced to declare bankruptcy after her and John divorced.
Our life has been turned into suspended animation at this point. And we take each day as it comes, and we're very flexible. We have to be. And we're ready to move at a moment's notice, if we have to get our boy back. We've had calls from every crank in our community, some even long distance, that will call up and say he's dead and laugh at us on the phone. We've had threats against our 2 older children. These are some of the things that we live with every day, and it's difficult. It's very difficult.
In 1994, a documentary on the Franklin scandal was due to release on the Discovery Channel, but was pulled just before the air date after they were threatened with a string of lawsuits from those mentioned in the film. In 1999, Paul Bonacci filed another lawsuit against Lawrence King, who refused to attend the trial, and the judge ordered he pay the full $1 million lawsuit on default, stating King's willful failure to attend was damning, and finding Paul's testimony to be credible and consistent. At the trial, Noreen Gosch was asked to testify if she had ever seen her son since his disappearance in 1982. To everyone's shock, she said yes.
Is News Channel 8.
I was asked to not tell anybody because Johnny feared for his life and mine.
Noreen Gosch says she's seen her son Johnny, and she says the missing Paperboy is alive. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Erin Hurley.
And I'm Steve Oswald. It is an amazing revelation in a bizarre story that all began back in 1982.
I did see Johnny in March of 1997. He came here very late at night.
Noreen Gosch says her missing son Johnny knocked on her apartment door without any warning almost 2 years ago. But why wait 2 years to reveal this stunning news? Well, Gosch was in Omaha on Friday testifying in the civil trial of a man named Paul Benassi. Noreen Gosch was on the stand confirming Benassi's story when the bombshell dropped.
The attorney asked me if I had had any personal contact or in fact had seen or talked to my son. And I was under oath, so I had to answer.
So what's happened to Johnny Gosch after all these years?
In their hour-long visit, Noreen became convinced he was really Johnny, sharing yet again personal family stories, and showed her his birthmark. He said that he had been abducted by a sex ring, only being released when he was too old for them anymore, and he could not reveal his identity for fear of retribution.
So what does law enforcement think? Well, Polk County Attorney John Sarcone says if Mrs. Gosch believes the story, then he's not about to say anything different. But West Des Moines Police Captain Bob Rushing tells the Associated Press that Mrs. Gosch has told similar stories before, only to recant them later.
I know that there are people in this town that don't believe it. They don't want to believe it, so they say Noreen Gosch is nuts. I don't care. I simply don't care. My first responsibility is to my son because I'm the only one he has left.
In 2005, after outspoken conservative journalist Jeff Gannon was outed for using homosexual escort services during his time as a White House correspondent, an internet rumor spread that he was Johnny Gosch due to similarities in his appearance.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Deedle and Daniels Show. This is a story 23 years in the making. On our first show, we told you about a missing Iowa boy.
Some claim that former White House reporter Jeff Gannon may actually be the missing boy. So right now, let's take a look back at how the story got started. In February, Gannon was exposed. His name, actually James Gucker, a man with no journalism experience whatsoever, who had links to several gay escort services online.
I do not know if Gannon is Johnny or not. Only a DNA test would provide that information conclusively.
Jeff, one question for you. Let's get right to the point. Are you willing to take a DNA test and settle the controversy once and for all? Yes or no?
Absolutely, I would definitely take a DNA test, but that isn't even necessary because there's so much evidence available to disprove these accusations.
That's a yes, then.
Well, he's saying yes. My friend Jeff is saying yes.
As a lawyer,
Let's get to the point. The point is, by giving a DNA sample, there could be opening up some other avenues of things that I kind of know that you possibly could be involved, and I don't knock it. Again, if you want to go suck on a Johnny Pump or whatever you want to do, you could do in this world. But the point is, all we're here for is to show that my friend Jeff is not Johnny Gosch. Jeff?
Why don't people believe me as opposed to some of these other people?
Your friend Bo Dita believes you. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show today and clearing this thing up. We'll do this DNA thing, and I'll make my friend Lisa here see that you are in fact who you say you are.
Gannon, whose real name is James Gucker, has been confirmed to be born in 1957 in Pennsylvania, making him around a decade older than Johnny Gosch. But to this day, he refuses to provide DNA to compare himself against the Gosch family, leading many to question why. One year later, Noreen Gosch would yet again wake to find a surprise on her doorstep. Inside an unmarked manila envelope were photos of underage boys tied up. Yet again, the case garnered national attention.
It was the biggest break in the Johnny Gosch kidnapping case since his abduction from a West Des Moines neighborhood in 1982.
2 pictures left at his mother's front door show a boy she believes to be her missing son. But a 3rd picture, one Noreen Gosch says came in the same envelope, could be even more important.
Now investigators believe this man holds the clues to his disappearance. Nobody knows who he is, but his photograph was left on Johnny's mother's front step along with 2 other photos that she believes to be her missing son. Pictures, Noreen Gosch says, are of her missing son, Johnny.
The whole thing is just like a nightmare.
This proves what we've been working on for the last 2 years was factual. What's your instinct on this?
The pictures are real. The pictures are real. That is my son.
Several of these photos would be traced to a website that showcased illicit underage material. And 2 weeks later, the photos of the tied-up boys were traced to Florida, where police confirmed they had already investigated the pictures, which were taken in 1979 by a group of boys challenging each other to an escape contest. But yet again, to fuel theories, Florida police had not saved those original photos to conclusively compare them with these. And eventually, 3 of the children were identified, leaving only one boy an unknown, who Noreen came to believe was Johnny. In the nearly 2 decades since that time, little movement on the cases has occurred. John Rossi, the only adult to witness the first car to speak with Johnny that morning, would undergo hypnosis to try and recall the license plate numbers, but was unable to do so, stating that inability has continued to haunt him the rest of his life.
I want to tell him that I'm still looking for him. I still love him very much and I want him to come home.
Eugene Martin's parents have both since passed away, never knowing what happened to their son. Mark Allen's mother has openly criticized Des Moines PD for the handling of her son's case, stating they told her to not speak with the press or with the Gosches.
I got this distinct feeling that they did not want parents to be frightened to let their children sell newspapers or do different things.
Lawrence E. King Jr. was released from prison in 2001 and has remained reclusive ever since. He has paid less than $40 of the $1 million owed to Paul Benassi. The cases of Johnny Gosch, Eugene Martin, and Mark Allen remain open to this day.
Do you have any suspects?
No.
Are you close to breaking the case?
No.
Are you close to making an arrest?
No.
The attempted abductions of paper carriers throughout the rest of the 80s remain unresolved and never officially linked. Is it possible that a child predator ring, either in Omaha or elsewhere, was abducting children off the streets? Did different predators get the idea from the early cases and unsuccessfully try to replicate them in later years? Or could the truth be more insidious, with multiple men working as supervisors to those paper carriers being uncovered as predators themselves? Were the disappearances an attempt to keep certain information quiet? Or even still, is it possible that the missing boys are still alive, either brainwashed, too afraid, or having run away voluntarily? So long as these questions remain unanswered, the porch light will remain on.